camera.
It's me because
We think
maybe just give me eye contact. I'll give a.
Definitely.
No,
Are you a brother? Are you a brother?
Yes.
I'm Brian.
Stephen.
And there's a fourth one, right?
I just
Okay, gotcha.
Is Granddad gonna sit there?
bring the chair.
Well,
You guys have a movie all good? Need anything? All right, just let me know, okay?
So walk down and walk up. This is a nice playlist.
Yes.
Do you want me to go sit down with you?
He's gonna get a yes.
I need some.
Hello there, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here for Julie and her family today. It's nice to see a good crowd out here, and we do appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Before we get started, if you got a cell phone with you, if you could turn it off or put it on silent, we would appreciate that so we can proceed uninterrupted today. And in just a moment, Celebrant Brian Bennett is going to start the service for us. Again, thank you all for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Sam said, thank you all so much for being here today and being able to support the family. I can't imagine the family has to so much appreciate this. If you've been through a loss before, you know that just being able to see friends and family is part of the blessing of a really hard day like this. So thank you so much for being here. I think it's, as we get older, I think it's really common to start asking ourselves some of the bigger questions of life. And one of those is simply, did my life matter? Did I make a difference? And by you guys showing up in such a strong number today, you are showing collectively that Julie's life mattered. And that's why you're here. That's why we're here today. And I had the privilege to spend quite a bit of time talking to Danny the other day. And I told him the same thing that I'll tell you, that my approach to doing a service like this is I truly believe that every person's life is a story that deserves to be told. And my privilege in being able to get to hear the story of someone that I never got to meet is exactly that. And Danny did such a great job of being able to tell their story together. And it is an amazing story. And so we're here today to do two things. We are here to mourn our loss because losing people is hard. And Don and I were talking a little, you just can't get used to it. Even if you expected it to come, it doesn't matter how old a person is or how young a person is, loss is always hard. So we are here to mourn her loss. But more importantly, I think we're here to celebrate her life. And it is a great life to celebrate. I'm a big believer in something that I call holy collisions. And what I mean by that is if you think back over the course of your life, there are certain times in our lives when we run into the exact right person at the exact right time in our life for the exact right reason that we needed to run into that person. That's what I call a holy collision. And, you think you might be sitting next to one of your holy collisions right now. You think back to where was that first place we met and why did we talk and who turned it into a second conversation and what was it we saw that we wanted to pursue? Because really life is really about those significant holy collision relationships. And I loved hearing that way back before dating apps and all that kind of thing, that a little coffee shop on the other side of the pond could serve as a great place to have a holy collision. And that's where Danny and Julie are able to meet. And I was so fascinated by hearing their story. And there's no doubt, we talked about this, there's no doubt that it was supposed to happen. He was there serving our country, which I want to pause and say thank you for, and for anybody else in the room that has served. I think one of the worst things we do in our country is we don't say thank you enough. So thank you for your service. But he was there serving. And usually he said that him and his buddies went out to a pub in the evening. And this time, for some reason, and he said this was the only time it happened, they went into a coffee shop instead. I mean, usually if people are going to lie, they're going to flip it the other way around. Normally it was a pub. This time it was a coffee shop. And while they were in there, they spotted Julie sitting with some of her friends. And he said the first time he saw her, he wanted to meet that girl. And he worked up the courage to walk across and introduce himself. And I think the next night, you guys went out together to a movie, wasn't it? And that's what started it. And they saw each other a lot from that point on. And I can always tell a lot about the person we're celebrating by a couple things. When I show up, I love to watch the pictures, and then I love to hear the music list, and then I kind of judge by the murmuring of the crowd, and you guys are a little bit rowdy. So I'm assuming that Julie, back in the day, and you found that spark together, and I just can't imagine, because you got to figure that if you're going to meet somebody from another country and you start getting close, you do the math in your own head. Somebody's going to have to move somewhere. So there was a lot at stake. But what amazes me about that is if that holy collision didn't happen, if you didn't go to that coffee shop, this whole room isn't sitting here. That's what those small choices make such a huge difference in our lives. And so whenever I have the privilege to do a service like this, and it truly is an honor, I consider this group of people sitting in this room at this moment we're our own version of a holy collision. Because there's really no reason to explain why this group of human beings would ever be at the same place at the same time, other than whatever your connection is to Julie or Danny or the family. And let's be honest, when we all parked our cars a little bit ago, every one of us have things in our lives that we're worried about, decisions we're trying to make, maybe stuff going on that nobody else in this room even knows about. And they're going to be waiting for us when we get back in the car. So my hope in the next few moments is that by the time we get back in our cars, we're going to be a little bit better people, simply because we took a few minutes to listen to her story. And I think that's possible. I've been telling my kids about our conversation for the rest of the week, because I learn something every time, and that's really our goal here today. I know that the last couple of years or so has been rough. I told Danny and the family I lost my mom to cancer about 14 years ago, and it's okay to say that cancer sucks. It just does. It's hard. And so I know that this has been a journey for all of you to be able to walk through, but that journey is only the last chapter of a story that she really did so well. 81 years and 2 continents is really kind of hard for me to wrap my head around. That's a lot of living. And you guys celebrated over 60 years together, and that's a great story. And so I'm going to share something that Donna put together. And I don't know, Scott, you want to come up and share?
Yeah.
You want to do that now?
Sure.
I got the nod, so Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It means a lot to us. I'm going to try to get through this without fumbling. I don't have anything in front of me, but it's hard trying to think what you're going to say about your mom, the person who gave you life, raised you, who gave you nothing but love for 44 years. And when I thought about it, the things I'd really like to highlight is, to anybody who knew my mom, is the kindness, the selflessness, the compassion, and the love she had for every living creature. I mean, it was amazing. And when I say selflessness, if you look at these pictures, my mom hated having her photo taken. Hated it so much. It would take 20 takes to get a Christmas photo taken. But the best pictures you'll see, undoubtedly, are the ones where it's candid. She's not looking at the camera. She's looking at us. She's looking at us when we're babies. She's looking at her husband, just with nothing but love and adoration in her eyes. And, that extended out to, as most of you, if not all of you know, animals. And I think the starting point, as far as I understand, was my parents were stationed over in the Azores, which is some islands along to Portugal in the middle of the Atlantic. And at that time, in that location, animal rights weren't particularly a notion that people had over there. And she started a borderline international incident by yelling at a woman who was beating a donkey. If you're stationed overseas, you're not supposed to cause conflict with the locals. Well, she did. And, I think my dad was approached about it, and then the reaction was basically, I don't care. And then there were, there's a bunch of stray animals there from both locals and from military personnel leaving their animals there. And that's when the adoptions started. And, by the time I came around in England, we had 3 dogs and 7 cats. And that's how I grew up. And, my fondest memories of my mom back in that time were, we lived in this quaint little English village, idyllic. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more perfect childhood. But I remember we'd walk through the village to get some stuff, and we'd buy carrots from a local farmer, and make sure that she brought in a couple extra carrots to give to a donkey that we passed on our way back. And we raised, she'd give me temporarily newts, caterpillars, tadpoles to raise, and then they'd magically escape overnight But just to introduce me to nature and to caring for things, and that stuck with me. I mean, people who know me know that I'm a nature boy. I love being out in nature. I respect all life. So that really stuck with me. It's a gift my mom gave to me. We had abandoned ducklings living in our bathtub for a few days, I think, a week, 2 weeks, I don't know. But I know, there was one of the ducklings was an ugly duckling, and that, of course, was all of our favorite. My mom always, we pulled for the underdog, the weakest of the weak. That's how my mom was, and I think that's how all of her kids are, and my dad also. She eventually became a vegetarian, as at least a good portion of my family did as well. And we moved to the States and adopted more dogs, and there's always a menagerie of animals. But that wasn't good enough. She started getting into Chihuahuas. And two things, Chihuahuas are small, so you can have 5, 10, and at one time 14 of them. And it wasn't just any Chihuahuas, though. These were bottom of the barrel Chihuahuas. We're talking one-eyed Chihuahuas, deaf, blind Chihuahuas, abused Chihuahuas, puppy mill Chihuahuas that wouldn't let anybody else touch them other than my mom. But that's how she was. I think the last one they had, the little girl, she was found frozen to the ground, basically comatose, just on the edge of death. And my parents went in to see her, and of course, my mom automatically was like, "We have to get her." And so they did. I've got another one running around that's deaf and blind, and he's basically a potato, but he loves to eat. He knows when it's time to eat, and he gets by. But that's how it is. And it didn't just extend to animals. I know that's probably what she's most known for, but I mean, it really extended to oppressed and impoverished people around the world. Anybody in her life, people that they ran across, whether it was a homeless person on the street or someone that they knew who was down on their luck, she'd want to lend a helping hand. And, sometimes I'd hear these stories and be like, she's getting taken advantage of, maybe. But she knew the risk. I mean, she thought that the reward of helping somebody out who was truly in need was far greater than the risk of possibly being taken advantage of. And I think that's extended to us as well. And it's extended to all of us as kids. I mean, we all have rescue animals. And my niece carried a caterpillar around with her at school a while ago until she could release it to a safe place. Just found out that my brother apparently befriended and fed a mouse at his job on his lunch break. Big tough guy Rod going all Green Mile and running a little mouse. So that's just what I want to touch on: the love, the compassion, the caring, and as Brian said, if everybody can emerge from this a little bit better, I think. With my mom despising being the center of attention, she probably hates us right now. But if we're going to take anything from it, and I would say, from my mom's her wishes, and I appreciate everybody who's donated, by the way, to His Hands Extended and Paw Patrol. That's really appreciated. My mom would love that. But moving forward, if we can emerge from this a little bit better, be a little bit more compassionate, be a little bit more understanding, help somebody who's down on their luck, adopt, don't shop, buy cruelty-free, and if you eat meat, then, maybe buy more humanely raised meat, or eat less meat, or don't eat any meat at all. I'm not holding my breath, but just the thought out there. I think that's what my mom would want to convey to everybody. So I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for coming again. Thank you to my wonderful family. We've stuck together through all of this. Don't know how many of us would have gotten through it without each other. That's another thing. My dad and my mom raised 4 children who are very different and not perfect, but we are all loving, caring, compassionate people. We all still love each other. We all come together in times of need. And that's a testament to my mom and my dad. That's her legacy that she leaves and will continue to live on through us and through her grandchildren. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Dude, I know you were hesitant about that, but I don't know why. That was, I mean, everybody, I think everyone would agree, you nailed it. That was awesome. Thank you for speaking on behalf of the family, and I felt like I was watching Dr. Doolittle 3. But what a great job of being able to share your mom and her heart. Donna has written something that I also want to share. She said, when my dad called me to tell me about her mom's cancer, she had already gone in for a mastectomy and had a port placed, but then found that it had metastasized and the surgery was canceled. In typical fashion, she did not want to worry us kids and didn't plan to tell us until the surgery was over. So she had all the testing and staging done before we were told anything. When I heard stage 4, it was literally a punch in the gut, as I knew the prognosis was poor. I don't think any of us will ever forget where we were and what we were doing when we received that call. Cancer did not affect just our mom, it consumed our whole family's life. Each scan led to a renewed fear of metastasis. Each procedure left us feeling helpless and stole a little bit more of her independence and pride, which saddened us immensely. For anyone who did not know our mom, she was fiercely independent, stubborn and strong. She's a British woman who never said never, and to lose her independence over time was devastating to all of us. Cancer stole so much from her, yet she rarely complained. There are few diseases for which the treatment is as bad as the disease process itself. Chemo took her hair quickly, followed by the feeling in her hands and feet, which led to difficulty walking and using her hands to do routine tasks. It left her fatigued and nauseated at times. It ruined her lungs and led to her being on oxygen at home. At 80, and targeted brain radiation. The radiation left her hard of hearing, affected her eyesight terribly, caused balance issues, left her with no appetite, and caused extreme unimaginable fatigue. Yet she continued to fight. She was a true warrior, hence her nicknames, Tough Old Bird and Badass. I refuse to say that her mom lost her battle because she never gave up. Instead, God did not want her to suffer and took her home to rest and become whole again. Although cancer robbed my dad of another year with his bride and robbed us kids of a selfless and loving mom, it cannot steal the laughs and joy that we have had and the beautiful memories we have created throughout the years. Our mom lives on in us and her granddaughters. She will always be in our hearts and minds. Cancer cannot steal that from us. That was very powerfully written. And she added a reading here. What cancer cannot do. Cancer is so limited. It cannot cripple love. It cannot shatter hope. It cannot corrode faith. It cannot eat away peace. It cannot destroy confidence. It cannot kill friendship. It cannot shut out memories. It cannot silence courage. It cannot reduce eternal life. And it cannot quench the spirit. And, when I talked to Danny, he told me that, over the 2.5 years that she fought this, and then in such great detail, what Donna just said, her main concern when she was going through everything she was going through was to hear about some of you friends who were going through things and wondering how you were doing. And, to a complete stranger, I'm sitting there just trying to piece together the story of this lady. And there's so many little brushstrokes that I was able to hear during this time. Because, to me, there's a big difference between being a human being and a human doing. And in our culture, we put a lot of emphasis on what it means to be a human doing. And if we were to meet for the first time over coffee, we'd probably ask each other in the first 60 seconds, what do you do? Or what did you do? Because we attach a lot of our identity to whatever we perform occupationally. And I understand, as Scott just shared, she was a phenomenal human doing. She liked to be busy and do, and with 4 kids. And, Danny had told me she was really the glue that kept the family going all those years. So I know that she was a great human doing, but that doesn't even touch on the kind of human being that it sounds like she was. And from the very beginning, one of the stories Danny told me early on, I love this story. Over there in England, she lived on a street called Clarkson Street. And he said their house was like 3 or 4 houses down the row from the corner. And when they were dating and Danny was working his magic on her, he would walk her home at night, but she would always want him to stop at the corner and not walk her that 3 or 4 houses to drop her off at the door. I don't know how long this went on, but he said he finally just insisted, I want to walk you to the door. This is what I want to do. And she finally told him that her mom didn't like Americans. And here's the cool part, they went anyway. They walked right up to the door and they met. And it wasn't that she didn't necessarily like Americans, but she didn't like some of the reputation that some of our American soldiers had. And that was her daughter that she was protecting. But you won her over. And the thing that I kept hearing throughout your story as you told it, and I've heard it today, I saw it in the pictures, the word that keeps coming back is just courage. I mean, think about being a young girl in England, thinking about leaving behind everything that she knew to come to a new country that she didn't know. All of that takes courage to do that. You know, her love for animals, her fight for her kids, you know, everything that she did in her life, it took persistence. Her battle with cancer, I had a front row seat to this. It's hard. And a lot of times, I felt this with my mom, most of the time they fight for us more than they do for themselves. Put up with a lot of stuff for us. Danny gave me a reading that I want to share as well. He said, I shall not pass through this world but once. If therefore there be any kindness I can show, or any good thing that I can do, let me do it now. Let me not defer it or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. You know, I believe that in this lifetime, we are born one time, but we die 2 times. The first time we die is a physical death, and that has now happened, frankly, at way too young of an age. But it's going to happen to every one of us in this room. We don't know when, where, how, but it's going to happen to every one of us sitting in this room. But the second time we die, in my opinion, is much more tragic, because the second time we die is the last time anybody ever says our name out loud. It's the last time anybody ever shares our story, looks at our pictures. And my encouragement is, you know, I know that the experts say grief is like this 5-stage thing that we move through. That's BS. Grief is messy. You might pass through it in a year. You might take 14 years. And my encouragement is that somewhere down the line, something out of the blue, you might see a one-eyed chihuahua or something's going to remind you of her. And you're going to think of her no matter how far down the road it is. My encouragement is to stop whatever you're doing at that moment and let that moment do whatever that moment's supposed to do. Get a copy of the pictures that were put together. That was powerful. And on those days, pop that thing in and just watch it. Continue to tell her stories, because not only for the generations, for the granddaughters that got to know her now, you're going to have kids, and they're going to have kids. And they need to know the story, because part of your family heritage and your legacy started across the pond. Continue to tell her story. It's up to this holy collision of people to make sure that she never dies that second death. Now, I'm a big believer, and I know that she was too, that this life is only chapter 1. I absolutely believe that with everything that's in me. I believe that there is a chapter 2. And I know that she shared that belief system. And I believe that right now, she is in a place that we can only dream about. She is in a place where there is no cancer. She's in a place where she got to be reunited with the people that she had to say goodbye to. And I have a feeling that she's in a place where she's eagerly going to wait to see every one of you. And if you share that belief today, you don't have to say goodbye. You can simply say, Julie, we will see you later. And mean it. And that's the hope that we have. You know, I want to close my time with one of the most powerful things I've ever come across. And I wasn't sure I was going to share it, but I do this to honor your mom, grandma, your wife, because I think this is the spirit that she lived her life with. It's part of a speech that Anna Quinlan gave to a group of graduates one afternoon at Villanova University. And I hope that this brings honor to Julie as we close our time together. She said, you walk out of here this afternoon with the one thing that no one else has. There will be hundreds of people out there with your same degree. There will be thousands of people that do what you do for a living. But you will be the only person alive who has sole custody of your life, your particular life, your entire life. Not just your life at a desk or your life on a bus or in a car or at the computer. Not just the life of your mind, but the life of your heart. Not just your bank account, but your soul. People these days don't talk about the soul very much anymore because it's much easier to write a resume than it is to craft a spirit. But a resume is a cold comfort on a winter night, or when you're sad or broke or lonely, or when you've gotten back the test results and they're not so good. So she said, here's my resume. Try to be a good mom to my kids. Try to never let my profession stand in the way of being a good parent. I no longer consider myself a center of the universe. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I'm a good friend to my husband. I try to make my marriage vows mean what they say. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I'm a good friend to my friends, and they are to me. Without them, there would be nothing to say to you today because I would simply be a cardboard cutout. So I call them on the phone when I can. I meet them for lunch. I show up, I listen, and I try to laugh. I would be rotten or at best mediocre at my work if those other things were not true, because you cannot really be first rate at your work if your work is all you are. So here's what I wanted to tell you today. And maybe if somehow Julie could be standing right where I'm standing, she'd say the same thing. Get a life. Get a real life.
I think she would.
She might, huh?
She would.
Get a real life. Not just the manic pursuit of the next promotion or a bigger paycheck or a larger house. Do you think you care so very much about those things if you blew an aneurysm one afternoon or found a lump in your breast? Get a life in which you're not alone. Find people that you can love and people that will love you back. And remember that love is not leisure. It is really hard work. So pick up the phone, send an email, write a letter, kiss your mom, hug your dad. Get a life in which you are generous and realize that life is the best thing ever. We have no business taking it for granted. She said it's so easy to exist instead of live, but something really bad happened to me. That's something that if I'd had my choice would have never happened at all, but it has taught me the biggest lesson of my life. I learned to love the journey and not the destination. And I learned that this life is not a dress rehearsal. Today is the only guarantee that we get. So I tell everybody that I meet the following advice. Consider the lilies of the field. Look at the fuzz on the back of a baby's ear. Read a book in the backyard with the sun shining in your face and learn to be happy. And think of life as a terminal illness. Because if you do, you will live it with joy and passion as it ought to be lived. Sounds to me like you all got to bump into somebody, have a holy collision with somebody who lived her life like that. It is my belief that on this side of heaven, we have one job, and that is to live as much as we can as the best version of who we are. And then when we get to heaven, I think we get to meet the best version of who we are. It sounds to me like with Julie, she just met her twin because she got to do it on both sides. On behalf of Sam and I, thank you so much for letting us have the privilege of being able to come alongside your family. It means so much that you're here today. And kind of as Scott echoed, when we get back in our cars, let's all walk with a little bit more pep in our step simply because of her story. That's the way that you keep somebody's legacy alive. If you're comfortable, I'd like to close with a word of prayer, and then we'll be done, okay? God, I thank you so much for bringing this holy collision of friends and family together. I thank you that over 60 years ago, Danny decided to go for coffee instead of a beer. And all that that has meant, the choices that they made, the courage that it took to start a family and move all over the place and just keep going no matter what life threw her way. And so, God, I pray that no matter what each one of us are facing, I pray that we'll do it with a little more courage because that's exactly the way that Julie did it. And that teaches all of us such a big lesson today. So I pray that you have found something that is, whether it be a picture or seeing an old friend or a hug or something that's been said, anything that will give us comfort and peace as we leave this place, not only for today, but in the weeks and months and years ahead. In your name we pray these things. Amen.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Brian. This does conclude Julie's service here today. You don't have to leave right away. We're not going to go flipping the lights on you or anything. So if you'd like to stay and please continue to share some memories with each other. Before we go, I'd like to invite the folks starting in the back here, if they would like to make their way up front to have a last leave. I'd also like to invite you to take a flower off Julie's spray as a keepsake as well, too. So again, thank you all for being out here. And if folks in the back would like to start to make their way around to the front, appreciate it. Thank you.
And there's food.
Never said a word.
Thank you. That was wonderful for us.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. That was really nice. Have a drink. It is.
You just feel numb.
Yeah.
Instead of coffee.
I can't tell you the last
Go
time
to
I
a
had
pub.
a drink.
Flip it. Flip the switch.
It's been a long time since I've been. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. That was nice. Good job. Thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Very good.
But you don't. Yeah, but you don't. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's our pleasure.
I'd be like, where are you? And then you have to cord and then maybe it's like,
Thank you so much for coming.
I'm so sorry for your loss. Scott from my severe.
Remember? Oh, we did your name.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're one of the drinking buddies? Uh-huh. Nice.